What is up, Steeler Nation? We are back for another great episode on the one and only The Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. And man, I feel like the last time that Aaron Rodgers is here. He was. It's not a pipe dream anymore. So definitely dive into that with our guest, the Sean Elliott signing. Exciting stuff. Our guy, we had him on last season. So there's some stuff happening in Steelers land, and we're going to get to it. But first and foremost, how's everything going in South Florida?
Good, you're right. We took a little summer break, a little refresh, reboot, a hiatus, if you will. But it's good to be back because, as we always say, man, the season is going to be here before we know it. The guys will be headed up to Latrobe. We'll have Aaron Rodgers potentially sleeping in a dorm room. And the storylines, of course, will just be all over national television. They are now. I can't turn on any of the major networks without seeing a picture or video of Rodgers or talking about TJ Watt. So definitely a lot of hot button issues going on in Pittsburgh right now. And obviously we're excited to have a Yinzer on today as well.
Yeah, great stuff all around. So, Jimmy, let's take it to the end zone.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
As Mike alluded to, are we going to fight for the intro right now?
Yeah, I'll do it, and then I'll kick it over to you for the first.
All right, sounds good.
Help myself. I was too excited. And this gentleman, he's a member of various NFL organizations, of course, fantasy football analyst. Find him over at Draft Sharks, and of course on X at Shane P. Hallam. We're excited to welcome in. What's going on, Shane?
Not much. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's not often I get to just talk Steelers, so I appreciate it being here in Pittsburgh. It's always a fun off season, but it's been a fun couple months for sure.
Well, listen, I have 6 fantasy football teams, so we're not going to skip that entirely. We'll get to that, but I know Jordan wants to start with the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, well, thanks. You're the honorary Yinzer on the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. I know you said the South Hills. We're over here in New Kensington. Well, Mike's originally from New Kensington, now in South Florida, but the power of technology can bring us all together. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. Aaron Rodgers, what was your initial reaction?
I was expected. I think we all knew it was going to happen at some point. Yeah, it was just when. And I think it's interesting just how until it actually happens is when it becomes real, I feel like, for this city. Like, we heard about it for so long. You assumed it was going to happen, but it took this signing to be like, oh, this is real. Is it good? Is it bad? Like, we could have talked about that a month and a half, 2 months ago. It should be expected. This is a team and a franchise that's never going to tank, that's never going to, rebuild. Like, that's just not in the Rooney's DNA, certainly not in Mike Tomlin's DNA. As much as, I'm an NFL draft guy, that's really where I came up in the draft scene. As much as I would like to get a top 12 pick again and draft a Ben Roethlisberger again, that's just not where the team's headed. And I think Rodgers last season, you saw the signs of age. I mean, he definitely doesn't have the mobility that he used to, but I think the arm talent is still there, especially when Devontae Adams was added to the team. You saw him make NFL throws that Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, old Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph can't make. And I think that's maybe the benefit of, hey, this roster actually is a little bit better and maybe can win a playoff game here. And if that's your goal because we haven't done it in so long, then this does put you in a step toward that direction.
Yeah, I agree. How much gas really, though, do you think that he has left in the tank? Are we talking about one playoff win? And obviously this is all hypothetical, but is this one playoff win, or do you think the Steelers have what it takes on this roster? And that leads me into my next question. Did they get enough help? And I know that they could still pull some strings, but is there enough weapons right now on this roster to kind of make a push for, a Super Bowl?
No, but that doesn't mean that there won't be come September. I think Omar Khan maybe learned his lesson last year with the Brandon Ayuk situation of waiting around, and then last minute the rug gets pulled, and now we don't have any weapons next to George Pickens. So I expect them to add something, and it might not be on a Brandon Ayuk type of level. Maybe it is signing one of the free agent wide receivers, like Keenan Allen, or someone like that, and Amari Cooper, even just to have some depth in that receiving core and give you another veteran presence. I think that's required to contend for a Super Bowl. I don't know if Rodgers has enough, even with that, to push for a Super Bowl victory in the AFC. I mean, it's just brutal. You're playing against Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. I mean, it's a brutal conference to go through that playoff gamut. So to me, this is a better odds than it has been. But I think this is, hey, you can win a playoff game. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to outduel Josh Allen. I mean, the defense for the Steelers would have to be, I think, historically good, and there's some talent there and some issues. The issues last season with communication and working together, I think they got rid of some of those issues in terms of personnel and swapping out personnel. So it's possible with like really good luck in the health department and really good scheme. Like I don't think it's a 0% chance they're a Super Bowl contender, but I think when we're looking at, like, if you could get to the AFC title game, I mean, that would be, I think, a phenomenal season.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree before I leave it to Mike. I mean, I don't think that any Steeler coach is going to get on here and say, of course, they're going to say Calvin Austin, can be a solid number 2. But going, and this is with all due respect to Calvin Austin and Robbie Woods, I just don't see either of them as a solid number 2. I think that you still need to go and grab someone before September starts. Completely agree there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the NFL draft is a really good tie-in when combining with some fantasy talk in regard to the Steelers. I mean, Jordan just mentioned receivers, and so I want to ask you about Roman Wilson. What was kind of your evaluation of him coming into last year? And obviously a tumultuous season, but what are your expectations for him now?
I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited about him. Going into the draft, I had him ranked as my 13th ranked receiver in the draft. I was maybe a little bit lower on Wilson than where he was drafted. But I had him with a day 2 grade, and that's where he went. I think it was kind of the expected draft capital. I think the injury derailments are awful, because it's really hard, especially in the receiver position, I think, to take that red shirt year 1 and then be able to catch yourself back up to speed. We just haven't really seen many players do that for almost a full season and be productive players. But you love the 4.4 speed. I think, like Calvin Austin, who also went through that kind of same deal, and I think we saw some flashes last year of like, he can be a contributor. I think Wilson can certainly be a contributor. I hope with how he looked at minicamp, if that continues into training camp, that you can create some plays for him, some jet sweeps or jet touch passes. I think there's ways to use Roman Wilson, even if he's not the slot receiver and gonna be that number 2 weapon, that he can contribute to this offense. So I have some hope, and especially like fantasy wise. I mean, he's free. You can get him at the end of drafts with a little bit of buzz growing. I mean, he's definitely someone I like taking at the end of fantasy drafts, because these targets are going to go somewhere, and Aaron Rodgers is not going to face the same issues that Russell Wilson did, where Arthur Smith wouldn't let Russell Wilson, if true, audible plays. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to do it anyway. Like, he's not going to give a crap. He'll do what he wants. He's going to throw the ball. The Jets were top 5 in passing last year, and they have Breece Hall in the backfield. Like, we're going to throw the ball a lot. So I think Roman Wilson, at the very least, is going to get some really significant targets if no one is added to this receiving group.
Yeah, it sounds like Ben and Matt Canada, where you would just wave them off and play in the backyard. Hey, you're going to run a slant, you're going to run a dig, and you're going deep. But yeah, kind of looking forward to seeing that collision potentially. But Let's move on to another guy that I want to tie into the NFL draft, generating a lot of buzz the last couple of months, and we know the pads have barely even been, even had dirt on them. But talk to me about Caleb Johnson, what you saw from him coming into the draft, and then talk a little bit about where you have him in Dynasty, and then maybe redraft, and maybe what you anticipate out of him and Jalen Warren in terms of a split.
I'm a fan of Caleb Johnson. He was my 5th ranked running back in the class. Behind kind of that big 4 that went in the top 40 picks. So I really think he could be a potential steal where they got him. We've seen he has that Iowa mentality, right? He has that Steelers mentality of being able to go through the line, have those between the tackle runs. But I think when people picture what we pictured Najee Harris and what Najee Harris was, breaking some tackles, maybe not super dynamic. I think you picture Caleb Johnson in the same way. But the thing is, his contact balance to me was what separates him as maybe someone that could be better than that round 3 draft position, because Iowa, usually known for their offensive line was pretty garbage last year. Like, Caleb Johnson was making his own. I think he was top 3 of the running backs in the combine in yards after contact per attempt. So he was getting hit in the backfield, staying upright, picking up chunks of yardage. They didn't use him much in the passing game, but one of the things I love about the combine is the receiving drills for the running backs. You can identify players. Jonathan Taylor was one. Didn't catch a lot of passes. You saw at the combine, like, this guy can catch. I think Caleb Johnson maybe isn't like, oh, wow, this guy's a really good receiver, but he's solid at it. Like, he's someone that can be used as a receiving threat. The technique is there. The smoothness is there. So I expect, especially long-term, that Caleb Johnson can be at least in that Najee role, if not really expanded. If he shows the ability to expand, then I think year 2, you could say, we don't need Jalen Warren. We could ship Johnson out. I think we'll see Warren start the season as the starter, just with how the Steelers approach things and Arthur Smith approaches things, like having that veteran kind of that knows the system, has been in the system, take most of those snaps. And I think Johnson will get some of the shorter yardage work, have a drive here, have a drive there. They like to kind of split up drives last year. I think they'll try that again. And if he shows that he can handle a full workload, that he can break off that contact in the backfield, that he can run outside and have a little bit more of a burst, then I think Johnson could really take off. I just took him in a rookie draft at the 111, in a super flex rookie draft. So I'm very happy with Caleb Johnson in rookie drafts to end of the first, early second. And I think in redraft, maybe he's going a little early because people are just hyped up that, like, he's the guy. I think the Steelers mentality is going to have a slow start for Caleb, but he's probably going to be a player in redraft leagues that I'm targeting to trade for. If he starts slow, it isn't getting a ton of work, and people sour on him, I'll gladly stash him on the bench, because he could, A, develop into that player, or if Jalen Warren gets hurt, which he's been prone to do, then I think Johnson can just take off.
Obviously, it'll be impacted by the Steelers' decision to bring in another receiver and who that receiver might be. But what's a floor for DK Metcalf if he stays healthy?
I think floor wise, the issue with DK Metcalf to me is, and similar with what we saw with George Pickens last year, is really being built on those big plays. Metcalf is not someone who's gonna run a drag route and just get a lot of these targets. So you're playing in a PPR league. You really need those big plays to hit. He'll have some spikes. He'll have some low plays. I think overall, DK Metcalf's going to be a solid wide receiver 3 in fantasy. And I think he has wide receiver 1 potential. If they don't add anyone and Aaron Rodgers wants to throw the ball more, we could see what we saw with Devontae Adams on the Jets last year, where Rodgers was just hitting them 12, 13 targets. Garrett Wilson, before they even took Adams, I think had an 18-target game. That's what Rodgers is going to do. Like, if he trusts you more than anyone else, he's going to throw it up there. So I think Metcalf has a really high ceiling. And, if you were doing early drafts and were smart about it, like, he was really cheap until Rodgers signed, and people were scared that it could be Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Jordan.
So we always like to get this topic, and I know you're, a local guy, but still, national stuff with Draft Sharks. What's your opinion on Mike Tomlin? I know it's a kind of cliche question in Pittsburgh, especially, but just kind of your take on where he's at in his Steeler tension.
It's tough. I think it's a really complex, a more complex question than people around here want it to be. I think we look at we hear about the streak of being 500 or better. We see the first round playoff exits. We see all these things and say, wow, Mike Tomlin, falls to him, and he's the head coach. It does fall to him, but I think it's a complex argument when he is one of the top 10 best coaches in the NFL. I'd probably say, probably the bottom of that list, but I think he's among those top 10. Just because I think there's a lot of coaching incompetency and pro sports in general. It's a really hard job. There's not a lot of people built to do it. Like Mike Tomlin is built to do it. He's done it and he's had success. This is the NFL. Like, you need a quarterback. You need a quarterback. If Mike Tomlin had a franchise quarterback, he would have won a playoff game. Like that's all it takes. Matt Canada could have been the offensive coordinator and would have won a playoff game with a franchise quarterback. Like, I think that's really the difference maker. And I think if the approach of the franchise and how they've addressed quarterback, I think you can talk about that. But I'm not someone that's ready to cast Mike Tomlin aside for what's next, because things can get worse. Like, it can get a lot worse, and we haven't experienced that here in Pittsburgh in a long, long time. The utter drudges of having a top 10 pick for 8 out of the next 10 years. It could be really bad. So to me, I think there needs to be maybe some oversight in hiring of coordinators and assistant coaches. I think Arthur Smith, for better or worse, wasn't an exciting hire, but a much better hire than Mike Tomlin has made at the offensive coordinator position in the past. So I think those steps are happening behind the scenes and will continue to happen depending on how things go. But I see a lot of talented teams out there. I think the Bengals are a prime example last year of this should have been a Super Bowl contender and they didn't make playoffs. That doesn't happen here. Even when we have a really bad team, when we have a team on paper that should be pretty bad. And, maybe it could be an Andy Reid situation where Mike Tomlin needs to go somewhere else. And that's when, he develops and we can find another head coach, and that'll be much better for us. Like, it certainly could be the case. But I'm not in the camp of, like, we need to fire Mike Tomlin right now. I would love to see us find a young franchise quarterback. And I think if Mike Tomlin has that, with how he can build the defense and how, he leads the young people on our team, I think the Steelers really would be one of the best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're all hoping here in Pittsburgh. That's for sure. Hey, it's been really great to pick your brain. Before we get you out of here, why don't you tell us everything that you got going on at Draft Sharks and anything else that we may not know, so our viewers can check it out as well as us.
Absolutely. Go to draftsharks.com. If you're in fantasy leagues, especially if you don't have, the time, you have a draft coming up in August. We have a draft war room you can connect your league to, and literally as you draft, we'll give you suggestions on who you should draft. We take your scoring, all the other rosters, teams into account. Super easy, and then during the season, tell you who to pick up, who to start. Some really good tools
right now for his 6 fantasy teams.
Some really good tools, and it's just one price for you could have infinite number of teams on there. So it's just worth checking out. It's one of the best in the business. I thought that before I started working there, and certainly now being involved in the day-to-day, I see it.
Love it.
Well, that's great. Keep up the great work. We'll definitely have to have you again once the Steelers kick off the season. But thanks again, man. Keep it up.
No, really thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, now that things are picking up, I guess it is fantasy draft season for me, which means Gonna have to take off about 3 weeks of podcasts to get my brain right, or just have
There you go. Or you could just
that
use the Draft Shark tool.
use the Draft Shark tool. It's a good point. We want everybody out there to check it out, and make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend, and leave us some comments in the YouTube channel. Follow us at SickPod Steelers. Make sure you follow both of us as well. JY, what is it? J York Football these days? JY Football?
J York Football.
J York Football. Yep, Sports One. So we got it down.
You did that. You did the intro and the outro. I thought we were going to rock, paper, scissors for this.
Shout out Yin's shop as well. Shop Yin's too.
Yeah.
And of course get your sick merchandise as well. So all right, man. Until next time. Appreciate it. Thanks,
all right, Jimmy, take it away.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.